to Sports Close-Up on Armstrong, our annual NFL Major College Football predictions. Got all the All-Stars with me. To my left, Bill Gregg. Bill, thanks for coming on.
Hey, it's a pleasure.
To his left, the attorney that keeps us in line, John Swick. John, thanks for coming on.
All right, Mike, good to be back.
And of course, the celebrity that gets everybody woken up in the morning on Cool, Lon Wilson. Lon,
Mike,
thanks for coming on.
Thanks for the invite.
And to his left, my co-host, Jim Berger, the SID of Allegheny College. Jim, thanks for coming on.
Always my pleasure, Mike.
And Bill, I don't know how to tell you this, but you got 3 Steeler fans and 1 Brown fan. That's you. So.
Well, actually, what I thought we should do is start off by spending about 15 minutes to talk about the 2016 Cleveland Cavaliers.
Oh, there we go. World champion.
They're going to hang on to that like grim death.
Yeah.
Your first well, that's because.
And when we're done with that.
Pittsburgh doesn't have an NBA team, so they can't have.
Well, we could talk about the Indians when we're done with the Cavs, and then
there you go.
Forget the Browns.
Well, congratulations for the city of Cleveland on getting a championship, and as we film this, the Indians are in first place in their division.
And I'm not really a lid guy, but I just thought I'd wear this to start the show, so now.
Yeah, and I think former co-host Gary Clark has had something to do with this.
Right.
Great things for Cleveland lately. All right, let's get to the NFL, guys. We're going to start with the NFL East: Cowboys, Giants, Eagles, and Redskins. Why don't you jump right in here, Lon, and what do you think about the NFC East division, and who do you like in that division?
Well, you guys are going to kind of, cringe a little bit here, but you got a weird mix happening in NFC East right now. I mean, Washington, showing some solid effort, but I'm just going to go right at it. I mean, John knows this about me. I'm always a fan of strength of schedule.
Okay.
And I look at the way that Tom Coughlin left. I didn't like it, but I like what the replacement was. I've actually been sold on that program.
McAdoo.
And McAdoo running a high-powered offense, and he's definitely got the weapons. Defense still needs a little bit of cleaning up, but if you got a 30th ranked, strength of schedule, you can make a mark. And I like New York Giants to actually win that division this year and be the only playoff team to come out of that division.
Wow! So you're not sold on the Cowboys?
No, not sold on the Philadelphia. The Philadelphia Eagles. That is a messy situation at best. I mean, this is a town that can boo Jesus. I mean, and the team reflects that attitude. So
a lot of people are high on the Redskins this year. I picked them for a playoff run.
I've been too high on them, but the hangover's been, bothering me for many years. So I've actually liked what I've seen in with the Washington Redskins, but I can't believe it until I see it. But I've got the Giants, like I said, taking the division.
Lon's got the Giants. John, where you fall on the NFC East?
I'm going to have to agree with my partner here. Last year was a transition for 2 teams. Dallas lost 8 more games than they won the year before, when Washington won 5 more. So you basically had those 2 teams flip-flop. The Giants were right about equal, and the Eagles fell back a little bit. I like Lon's analysis on the Giants. I think they are going to be better. They're coming off of 2 6-10 years, which on its face would seem like they're not going very far. But if you dive into that 6-10, they actually lost, I think, 6 or 7 games when they were leading in the second half. So it's a little bit deceiving. I think the change from Coughlin now to McAdoo is going to help. They have a lot of pieces in place. Their offense is pretty solid. They got some playmakers. Defensively, they're solid as well. Washington, I think, maybe holds serve, but is that enough to get him a wild card spot? I don't know. And I don't see similarly with Philadelphia. I think the Chip Kelly fallout is still so severe that it's such a change in philosophy between Chip Kelly and whoever's going to come in after him, because Chip Kelly was so unique in what he did. It's going to take a year for them to stock their personnel that's going to match the new philosophy they have there. So I don't see them going anywhere. And I think Dallas, obviously Tony Romo's injury last year was the reason that they lose 8 games. But even with Tony Romo, and they got too many holes on the defensive side. Offensive line is still probably the best in the NFL, but I think too many holes defensively for them to step up. That division's been one where a different team is winning it every year, and I think you're going to see that again this year, and I agree with Lon. I'm going to go with the Giants. Whether or not Washington hangs on for a wild card spot, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But that's where I am with the NFC East.
So you don't even give the Cowboys a chance?
I don't think the Cowboys and the Eagles are going to be
too many good teams in the NFC this year.
Okay. Bill?
Well, I'm going to disagree with the gentleman.
Well,
my esteemed colleagues here. Yes. I'm picking the Cowboys to make a dramatic 6-game leap from a 4-12 record to 10-6 this year. I believe Tony Romo and Ben Roethlisberger, we were discussing this before the show started, are the 2 most valuable players to their team in the NFL. And if Romo, assuming he could stay healthy at age 36, can make it through a 16-game
Wow,
season.
he's 36 already.
Yep.
Yeah.
Of course, they've got Ezekiel Elliott, who's going to be the Rookie of the Year. They brought in Alfred Morris as a running back to really shore up a big problem from last year.
The Alfred Morris move was a big move. I have to admit that was a really good move.
I agree with Mr. Swick. Their secondary and defensive line really hasn't improved itself. They didn't address that as well as they should have. But that's the nature of the NFL these days. Almost like arena football, some of these games. I could see the Redskins going about 8-8, not making the playoffs. I see the Giants at 7-9 and the Eagles behind that. So I'm picking the Cowboys as the only playoff team to come out of the NFC East.
Well, okay, Jim.
I actually agree with Bill. I think that Dallas, I mean, to look beyond the stats, or I guess a little more shallower than the stats, a couple down years, and there's always one year where they kind of, make some noise. They have, like you said, Romo is a very valuable player. He has that offensive line. He has a run game now. They're going to have to outscore teams. That's one of the things this year. And, looking at their schedule, the NFC East doesn't exactly have a lot of prolific offenses, so they might be able to do well within the division. But Lon, I know you said the NFC has a lot of really good teams, so beyond that, I don't know. But I think Dallas wins. I think Dallas and the Giants 1 and 2, Redskins and Eagles 3 and 4. Again, Eagles. Chip did, he left his mark for sure, but I don't know if that's a good thing. They're going to have to have a heck of an adjustment there this year. He shuttled away so many players in 1 year. It's got to be crazy with the team chemistry, and I don't think that. I think the Eagles are going to be reeling. So yes, I have Dallas winning the NFC East, just ahead of the Giants.
And we keep it in mind here, though, that Tony Romo can get hurt on the coin flip. That's what you're up against, and that's why I cannot.
I've never seen so much publicity and so much talk in print over the backup quarterback.
They have for backup this year.
The backup quarterback of Dallas gets hurt, and you would have thought that.
They were trying to get Josh McCown, but
it was amazing how
they're scouring UPS, all the docks, just to find somebody they can pull
all the
out
consternation.
I think
over
Kellen
the
Moore is their backup at this moment.
I think you're right.
Wow.
We have 2 for the Cowboys, 2 for the Giants. So I'm going to look at this, and I'm going out on a limb. I'm picking the Redskins to win the East this year. I think Gruden has done a great job. I like their quarterback. I think the team chemistry is really there in Washington a lot. I look at the Cowboys being an iffy team. The Giants are 1 play away from being 2-10 or whatever if Eli ever gets hurt. Although he's very tough and he shows his toughness. What scares me about the Giants is their offensive line. I don't know how good their offensive line is if it can keep Eli standing up. I think that's why, and it says what you're saying too, Lon, I think McAdoo's going to have Eli throw a lot of quick passes to get the ball out of his hands.
It's going to open up the field quite a bit, and you've got the receivers with some.
Yep.
I tell you, they've got some serious talent.
Well, if they're, we know Odell Beckham and he's really good. Victor Cruz would come back like he was a couple of years ago. That would be really amazing on offense. Defense, they got a little stronger. But I look for my pick is the Redskins, surprising everybody in the East. All right, guys, let's go to the NFC South, and Lon, we'll start with you again.
Well, this is, I think the NFC South is going to be back to where it belongs, to where you have a team with 9 wins winning the division. I don't think Carolina is going to roll as much as they did. I certainly feel they're going to defend it. But if you look up and down, the line, Jameis Winston's going to get better. Tampa Bay, New Orleans, their big offseason acquisition was Colby Fleener. What the hell? It's going to get a Fleener.
Not a fan of that one.
No, Fleener's a fine tight end, I'm sure. But I don't think, like I said, it's going to make or break what they need in New Orleans. And Atlanta, you never know what Matty Ice is going to bring you. In Atlanta, of course, they have had an older set of wide receivers. They got Julio Jones now, some experience. But like I said, it's just Atlanta's such a question mark. With Carolina, though, I think with Benjamin, coming back, I think with a lot of, I think that offense is going to outright win. That division, and that's my only team is Carolina coming out of that division with a playoff.
John?
So the last 2 years, that has been the only playoff team out of the NFC South. Carolina wins 8 more games from 14 to 2015. That kind of jump in the NFL rarely happens, and it's really unique. A lot of things went well, except for the Benjamin injury, but they were able to overcome that. I see this division as one that's going to get 2 playoff teams for the first time. I see a lot of movement and a lot of strength coming out of both the NFC South and the AFC South, which we'll talk about later. Both of these divisions have been down. If you remember 2 years ago, the 9-7 team got into the playoffs. I think it may be even a 8-7-1 team got into the playoffs, or 7-8-1 team got into the playoffs. And anyway, I think Atlanta's a team that's really the one to look out for this year. It's the second year of Dan Quinn. I think that they have a lot of weapons on offense with Devontae Freeman. They picked up Manu Sanu from Cincinnati.
Mohamed Sanu.
Mohamed Sanu, yeah, from Cincinnati. They have a couple running backs that are good. I think defensively they're much more solid than they have been. They picked up Freeney, picked up some other guys defensively. I think a second year in Dan Quinn, who used to be a defensive coordinator over in Seattle. They're going to be more solid. I see them stepping up and maybe competing for that division. If not, I see them slotting in as a wild card. And I see Tampa Bay being better. They increased by 2 games last year. So all 3 of the 4 teams increased their wins from 14 to 15. New Orleans is the only one that didn't, and I don't see New Orleans getting much better either. So I see 2 teams coming out of here. I think Carolina, the trend for Carolina, though, is not good. The loser of the Super Bowl, if you look at the statistics, does not come back and do well the next year. So I don't see them maybe going to the conference championship, but I do see them holding serve and at least being able to get into the playoffs. So those 2 teams I see coming out of the South.
Bill?
I agree. I guess it's going to be a consensus that we see Carolina. I certainly don't see them at 15-1, probably winning the division more like 10-6. They do have Kelvin Benjamin back, and between him and Gregg Olson, they've got some weapons. My only caveats about the Panthers are, A, why would they get rid of Josh Norman? Just still doesn't make any sense to me. And B, they're certainly going to face a far tougher schedule than they had last year. So I see them losing a number of games coming out of the division. I actually don't see any other playoff caliber teams. I believe Tampa Bay may end up being the second best team in the conference. I could see them going from 6 wins to 8 wins this year. Jameis Winston, I think, is going to be really coming into his own, and this is his second year. And talking about the Falcons, I just have a whole different viewpoint than John. I'm really disappointed with the weapons that they seem to have on paper. They only averaged 21 points a game last year, and that was with Matt Ryan and Julio Jones playing 16 games.
It really is amazing because that team used to be the fantasy football team that you would pick up. The other thing is this division is a division of quarterbacks. You have 4 pretty good quarterbacks in this division. Maybe one of the better divisions for quarterbacks top to bottom.
Well, we're going to see the biggest thing is they got the #1 strength of schedule. They got the toughest schedule, starting with Atlanta, and then you go down the line there in that division. They're going to have to really earn every win. So it's going to
I don't see them having improved themselves on defense at all. That's a team that only got 19 sacks the entire season.
You know what's interesting about a strength of schedule? Every time I see it before the season starts, I think back what John always says. Because it changes within the year. Sometimes you think you have the toughest
based
schedule.
On last year.
And some of those teams you play turn out to be cupcakes because of injuries. And some of those teams that are really weak last year come out and surprise people. And they're a tougher game for teams than some other teams. So sometimes
it's interesting you say 19 sacks. You're right, but they had 15 interceptions, which is a big number.
Yeah.
When they didn't get to the quarterback. So if you can get to the quarterback from Atlanta's defense we're talking about, I think that's where my analysis where I thought they'd be better.
Yeah, Bill. Jim, I mean.
All right, Joe. I have Carolina. You can't pick against a team that's been in the Super Bowl. I agree, though, what John said. The next year after Super Bowl is always a tough one. Plus, you said the strength of schedule. But I can't pick against them. They're not going to be 15-1, of course. But I think that they still have the weapons. Like you said, Benjamin coming back. That's almost like a big free agent acquisition. Cam Newton. He was fantastic last year. Except for the Super Bowl, but I think he can, hold serve during the regular season. And I do like Atlanta as the second place team. I know, Ryan. Remember last year how fast they started? I mean, Ryan.
5-0.
Yeah, they were throwing 4 touchdowns a game. Julio Jones, but I think that I like you said with Quinn as the coach. I think they got another year under him. So I like the Falcons as 2. I have both those teams coming out into the playoffs. Carolina 1 and Atlanta 2. The Bucs will be improved for sure with Jameis Winston, a second-year quarterback. We saw what he could do last year. He stepped right in, played well beyond his rookie year. And then the Saints, again, I can't see it. You wonder how much does Drew Brees have left in the tank. He's one of the older quarterbacks in the NFL. I really admire the heck out of the guy for the stats he's put up. 5'11". He's 4,000 yards a year. But how much does he have left in the tank? And we talked about how valuable Romo is to Dallas. I think, Brees with his age, his size, everything, he could be due for a breakdown. I don't want to see it, but I just don't see the Saints, and that's a big reason why.
Okay, and what I'm saying for the NFC South, I'm going to go with the Falcons. I think they started off strong. I think, as John pointed out, Quinn's back for a second year. I look for them to finish strong also. So I'm going to pick the Falcons. I think Carolina might get a wild card, but I look for them to have a tough season because their strength of schedule. And also, I think you're going to see some problems because I think the Broncos showed how to stop Cam Newton in the Super Bowl. And I think a lot of teams are going to copy that. The Saints, guys, Sean Payton, I think, is on the hot seat. I really do. This could be Sean Payton's last year in New Orleans. I think he's getting old there. Tampa Bay is going to be on the upswing. All right, let's go to the NFC North. Lon?
Well, you know what? I like the NFC North, and I like Green Bay and Minnesota coming out 1 and 2 in that division. I think that Green Bay healthier. They got very limited amount of players on suspension. So I mean, it's it's sad to say that, but Green Bay, I think Aaron Brooks is still one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. I'm sorry, Rodgers, yeah. And I think Teddy Bridgewater is maturing into a good quarterback, and I think that team has finally found some concrete to stand on in Minnesota after some really goofy years. So
I like that.
I like what they're doing. Even John Fox even coming to Chicago was big because they're going to concentrate on defense and they're going to get things going right there. Now, what they lost on offense was crazy. You losing Martellus Bennett at tight end. There's 6 or 7 touchdowns right there, John Swick.
Matt Forte.
And Forte.
Yeah, and you lose Matt Forte, which, I mean, they've got another young back coming up, but and Detroit, I don't know what to say about Detroit.
They get to play on Thanksgiving Day, though.
Well, yeah, I know. They got a great game on Thursday, so. But I'm going Green Bay coming out, Green Bay and Minnesota coming out 1 and 2.
John?
Last 2 years, this division did produce 2 playoff teams. It was Green Bay and Detroit 2 years ago, Green Bay and Minnesota. This past year, Minnesota and Detroit basically flip-flopped over the last 2 years. Minnesota gaining 4 games, Detroit falling back, which was surprising. Detroit was a team that I thought was going to be better, and I think the consensus was they were maybe ready to take the next step. Little did we know that next step was backward and not forward. I think Lon's analysis is probably there. I think Green Bay and Minnesota again. Teddy Bridgewater, I'm still concerned. He doesn't throw a very deep ball, doesn't stretch the field very much. You look at Mike Wallace getting out of town, and what does he say? He says, my man couldn't hit me, couldn't get him down the field. And I think while Wallace maybe wasn't real articulate about it, I think maybe he did point out something that is
quarterback under the bus.
Yeah, it is maybe a shortcoming of his, although he's won in the NFL, so he's more legitimate than some of the other starters. This Detroit, I still think, is having problems. I agree with the Chicago Bears analysis and John Fox. They are going to be better. They were 6-10, and the last 2 years, I think they're 1 game different. I think they'll be better, maybe 500, but I don't think they make the playoffs. Maybe 2 come out of here, but I think if there's only 1, I think it'll be Green Bay again.
Bill?
I'm on board with the cool boys on this one. I can see Green Bay and Minnesota as playoff caliber teams. I remember last year I sat here and I predicted that Green Bay would win the Super Bowl, and I predicted that they would set an all-time NFL scoring record.
Boy, you wrong.
Boy, was I wrong.
You lost Jordy Nelson.
If anything, the defense is what got him into the playoffs last year. But and they only averaged 23 points a game. So the lack of weapons, and you just had to think that Rodgers was hurting different times through the season.
Offensive line was suspect.
The offensive line was suspect. But Jordy Nelson's back. Hopefully Eddie Lacy's trimmed down from his rotundness that he had.
Yeah, he was hitting the Popeyes chicken stand pretty hard.
Yeah, he went to a lot of buffets on the way.
So I could see Green Bay, and I'm not really impressed that they're a super caliber team, but I could see them going 12-4. I got Minnesota at 10-6 and being in the playoffs. Kind of mentioned about Bridgewater. He's an impressive young fella, but for all his great statistics, he only threw for 17 touchdowns in the entire season. They did draft a nice-looking kid named Laquan Treadwell as a receiver.
He probably run routes that Mike Wallace only runs straight down the field.
Yeah. And he may try. He may
had one move.
Try it. One thing it's going to be interesting to see about Minnesota is Adrian Peterson turns age 31 this year. So we'll
but
just keep
he's
an eye
really
on him.
30 because he sat out a season. Yeah. I mean,
But on the strength of their defense, I think Minnesota really has a great defense, and I think they'll put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. I kind of defer on my comments about the Bears and Lions. I think they both do have problems. I mean, Calvin Johnson's gone. That's a big void there. But neither one are a playoff team, so I'll stick with the 2 I discussed.
Jim?
I'm going with the consensus as well. Green Bay 1, the Vikings 2. Talked a little bit about Jordy Nelson. Again, that's like signing a big free agent pretty much. You're getting one of the top wide receivers back in the game. And Rodgers, you know, he's still, might be approaching 30 years old, but he's still, he's one of those elite quarterbacks they like to talk about on ESPN. And Eddie Lacy too. He has the talent. Look at the college career he put together. When he's healthy, when he's in shape, he can be pretty dynamic. So with a combination of him and Nelson and Rodgers on offense, I think that they could go 12-4. They will win that division. And the Vikings also, I talked to Adrian Peterson. That's the first thing I thought about when I was looking at the Vikings. You know, he still is fresh. Can he still be the old AP? He had flashes of it last year. Now he's got a pretty good quarterback in Bridgewater, so I think that's a good combination. The Bears, I think they'll be on the upswing, but again, did they lose too much? And the Lions, you know, they were pretty much a one-man team last year with Calvin Johnson. What's that make them now, you know? Hate to say it, but I don't think Detroit's going to be much of a factor. So, Green Bay 1, Vikings 2.
NFC North, I think the Lions will be in contention for the first-round draft pick when the season's over for next season. The Bears, I'm not sold on their quarterback. His body language, to me, if I was a fan of Chicago, I would just be throwing up. I'm serious.
Jay Cutler?
Yeah, he always looks like he has a problem during a game, or he has. I'm not sold on Jay Cutler.
He had one good commercial.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
The Packers led the league last year, and I couldn't believe this until I saw this stat in the amount of short passes by the NFL. They threw more short passes than any team in football. Who would have thought so with Aaron Rodgers?
I think that is a reflection on the offensive line.
Exactly, and that's the problem with the Packers this year. Is the right side of their line is a big question mark. The left side, I think they solidify, but the right side could be a question mark. I think this is the year the Vikings might sneak ahead of the Packers and win that division. I think the Vikings, I'm going to pick the Vikings to win the division, the Packers to come out as a wild card if Aaron Rodgers stays healthy. And the reason why I say that is he's getting a little bit older also, and if they don't throw short passes and they don't fix the right side of their line, they're in trouble. So I'm looking for Minnesota maybe to snatch it from Green Bay. NFC West, Lon.
Yeah, the West, it's interesting because it's now time for Chip Kelly Part 2. And, you know, we'll see what that happens in San Francisco, which I think it's a very dysfunctional program out there since Mike Singletary took over and on and on and on. So we don't know what's, going to happen, with that program. The quarterback, and how many times have I said this about Colin, is let him be himself. And let him do his thing. Let those wheels go.
If he's even going to be the starter?
Yeah, he's going to be doing his thing on the bench.
I think he's going to be the starter at some point, if not at the beginning of the season, because Kaepernick's got the talent. And I still believe that he could actually win more games than he's lost, So but it's still going to be a disaster. I don't even know what I'm talking about them. My top 1 and 2 are, and they got a tough schedule this year too. And you guys talked about strength of schedule early, and I didn't rebut, but those guys who make it through that tough schedule and even it out, even the plane, you look every year, and those are the top contenders every year for a title. The ones who can even that out. Seattle and Arizona are going to be a dogfight for that division, and I think they're 1 and 2. And I think your Super Bowl contender is going to come out of the West. It's either Arizona or Seattle. So
who are you picking to win the division?
I'm taking Arizona to win the division. I mean, would you think we'd be sitting here saying it's the best offense in the NFL last year?
Got one of the greatest coaches in the NFL, though.
Arians,
Great guy.
I'm
Great
happy
man.
for him. And it's kind of become Pittsburgh West out there.
Yeah.
But regardless, Pete Carroll, who I just do not like.
Just win.
But all he does is win. The more I dislike him, the more he wins.
Any
So,
level, he wins.
in Seattle, they're not a slouch of a team. I bet you, post Marshawn Lynch, they're going to get it together. So,
And they don't have to travel as far as those teams because the Rams are back in L.A.
and LA's going to be a disaster. I didn't even. That's a high functioning disaster. So,
John?
Yeah, the last 2 years, this division's kind of held serve. We've had Seattle and Arizona make the playoffs 2 years in a row, and the other two teams really not all that competitive. I thought the Rams would be better. But, Fisher, he now, if you look over his coaching career, he's been 7-9, 8-8, 9-7, almost every year his entire career. And I don't see now with the move. I'm not sure the move to LA is going to be that impactful. But I think that team might be better. Their defense is very, very good. But I think offensively, they have the number 1 draft choice. So you have a shot now with quarterback wise. He's not going to start, but we'll see what happens there. I think Arizona and Seattle hold serve. Seattle was coming off the hangover from losing the Super Bowl, but they still were able to rally and make the playoffs. You have to give them credit for that. because as I mentioned earlier, the loser of the Super Bowl rarely, if ever, gets back to the playoffs. I do see both teams coming into the playoffs again this year. Is Carson Palmer still have it, is the question from Arizona. There are weapons there. Larry Fitzgerald's a year older as well. That defense has some names on it. They just signed Tyrann Mathieu to a big deal in the secondary. So there's some talent on both of those teams. And I agree with Lon. Both of those teams I think are going to be vying for the NFC Championship. I don't know. You can kind of throw them together. I think I'd probably give the nod to Arizona. They won it last year, that division. I can see them probably winning it again, although Seattle's probably getting that second wild card.
I agree with these fellows again, to an extent. I'm looking at
caveat there.
I'm looking at the NFC West as having the team with the best record in the NFC, and that's going to be Arizona. I can see them winning 13 games this year.
Wow.
And John mentioned a couple of the names. One that kind of flew under the radar a little bit that they picked up was Chandler Jones. And I just think he's going to be a major factor in that already good defense. Carson Palmer had injury issues apparently last year that weren't disclosed. By all accounts, he's healthy this year, and I think with Tyrann Mathieu back, I just think they've got all the weapons on offense, and they've always had the defense. I'm picking the NFC West as having the teams with the two worst records. I can see the Rams, and I kind of based this on Jared Goff being the starter. Do you know otherwise, John? I thought they were going to install him as the starter right off the bat.
You may be right.
I can't see. And I'm not saying this because they don't have the talent. They really, with Aaron Donald and Robert Quinn and a bunch of guys on defense, they do have some talent. I just don't see them having any wins this year. So
Lion King?
Yeah, So
I'm picking them at 2-14 and San Francisco at 3-13. I think Seattle is going to be considerably behind Arizona, but sneaking into the playoffs as a wild card at 9-7.
And that's a big benefit of a team like Arizona and Seattle. They got those two teams twice.
Yeah.
So, that makes a big difference. So
I'm interested to see Jimmy Graham this year. See what he can contribute to Seattle.
He didn't do much last year.
He didn't.
I think he's going to do okay. But Seattle runs such a smart. They're a smart team that can run a plug and play kind of offense. They can get a good route runner.
You were joking about Kobe Fleener. Watch to see what he does in that Seattle
There's a time when I would have picked Graham as being better than Gronkowski at tight end in the NFL, but we'll see.
Jim?
I agree with the group. Great minds think alike. I have Arizona number 1, Seattle number 2, both teams in the playoffs. Arizona can put points on the board. You do worry about Palmer now that he's a little up in age, but Larry Fitzgerald, probably my favorite player in the NFL ever since he was in college. He's a class act. He just makes plays. And the spike in his statistics last year from the year before were incredible. I think some people wrote him off, but then last year he had an incredible year. Mathieu, very, very dynamic on defense. He can kind of do it all. It will be a dogfight, though, between them and Seattle. Seattle is a proven winner. I agree about Pete Carroll. There's something about the guy, but, Russell Wilson knows how to win. They lost Marshawn Lynch, so that might be a little interesting, but I think they're 1-2. The Rams, you feel bad for a guy like Aaron Donald, who might be one of the best defensive players in the NFL, but he doesn't get his due justice because he plays for the Rams. He's going to put up the numbers, but what else do they have, especially with the rookie quarterback? And, the Niners, Kaepernick, it's interesting to see what they'll do with him. How does he get along with Chip? How does the whole team get along with Chip? Because you saw what happened in Philadelphia. So, Arizona 1, Seattle 2, both teams in the playoffs. It'll be a dogfight, but I like Arizona.
All right, I'm going to go with Seattle. I don't think anybody else comes out of there.
Wow.
I'm not sold on Carson Palmer. I know he's doing better on Bruce Arians, but I think he still makes mistakes. I think the Rams are going to have a new coach next year. You talk about Jeff Fisher, 7-9. I think he was held over since they made the move from St. Louis to L.A. After the season, I think Fisher's looking for a job, which is a good move by the Rams. I think they're going to bring in a big name from somewhere in L.A. Chip Kelly, you're exactly right, Lon. I don't know what San Francisco's thinking about. I mean, my God.
That was a weird move.
Oh, my God.
After, I guess they see, they're so close to Oregon, they see what can happen there.
But I'm going to go with Seattle winning that division. I think Seattle might get back to the Super Bowl again.
Oh, wow.
All right, we're going to go to the AFC now, guys. AFC East. Lon?
Yeah, the AFC East, I have two teams actually coming out of there. And I like Fitzpatrick, and I'm glad the Jets, and I don't know what took so long to make this deal happen. Were they nuts? I mean, this is a guy that can win 9 to 10 games. And with Brady out the first 4 games, people are like, I'm like, that is the time. Jets got to come out 3 out of 4, 4 out of 4 with Brady out.
3-1 at least.
And I think New England, and again, New England, smartest team in the NFL, player personnel wise, knowing how to win. I'm going New England 1 and New York Jets 2. 2 teams coming out. Buffalo improving, and the head coach was it Adam Gase from Miami?
Adam Gase, yeah. Yes.
I have nothing more to say. Adam Gase.
John?
You're going to like this report, Mike. I see the New York Jets finally ending the reign of the Patriots in the AFC East. Looking back, I think it's like in the last 13 years, the Patriots have won it every year except for one. It's a phenomenal run and really unprecedented run since they went to the current format of the divisions in the NFL. But the combination of the Brady 4-game suspension, I still think they come out of that 2-2 at worst, maybe 3-1. That's not going to be necessarily the death knell for them.
No.
But I just see the Jets as really putting it together. I think you got maybe the stink of Rex Ryan finally out. I think that culture has completely changed. I think Todd Bowles seems solid. The weapons they have on offense are from the receiver perspective and a running back. They're solid.
They started finally paying dividends,
and they got depth through. And defensively, their fronts, they're actually a defensive line and a defensive secondary. Maybe can say perhaps best in NFL. The linebackers maybe not as strong, but defensively, I think they're going to be in the top half of the NFL. So I see probably both teams come. I see 2 teams coming out of this division for the playoffs, but I see the Jets ending the Pats' reign and winning this division. The last 2, I don't see the Bills or the Dolphins. I was on the Dolphins program last year.
Yeah, you were.
And
you were.
I was, and and it didn't work out so well. I don't see either one of those teams. And Rex Ryan, I think he plateaus. You know, he's the type of guy that takes a bad team.
With him this year.
Yeah, and boy, double the fun, right?
Wherever his brother goes,
the
L's follow.
He hasn't quite the buffoon maybe that he was in New York, but he still has that classlessness that you can't. That it's tough, I think, for him to be a leader when things are difficult. The character's missing, and I think that pervades a team when times are tough, and not in a good way. So I don't see either one of those teams really doing much. So that's where I am.
Bill?
I'm just kind of laughing about your comments about Miami. In the last offseason, they've added Arian Foster, Mario Williams, Kiko Alonso, Brian Maxwell, and of course they had Sue from the year before.
So they have more security.
And I can answer to most of those players.
That reminds me of
security in their locker room.
That reminds me of the Philadelphia Eagles a few years ago when they were assembling that, and it didn't work. Plus they lost Lamar Miller, which I think is a huge.
That was the big loss.
Huge loss, yeah. And so this is the last chance for Ryan Tannehill. But I don't see it happening. I think Miami's in last. I see Buffalo just hovering at 8-8 again. I hate to say this, but I don't see the Jets making it either. Their defense was tough. I just see the defense and a tougher schedule that the team's going to face this year. The defense in a bit of a decline this year. So I'm just going the old company route with New England winning it. They got the same cast of characters plus Martellus Bennett as another weapon.
Yeah, Martellus Bennett was such a huge pickup. And people don't know how nasty that guy played in Chicago.
Right.
He actually can go out and whack linebackers while he's catching a touchdown pass. So big fan of his.
Brady's going to have fresh legs when he comes back in Week 5 against the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, who do they got starting there? Alapalopoulos or what is his name?
Jimmy Garoppolo.
Whatever.
Probably he could guide him to a 2-2 record.
The Garoppolo fact.
I am a little troubled again by that Chandler Jones getting rid of him at the key position as a pass rusher. But as always, I think New England's going to have enough. So I'm fortunately saying I think they're the only team coming out of that division.
Okay.
I have New England winning it because Belichick. You saw what they did a couple years ago when Brady was out. They went 11-5. He still didn't make the playoffs, but you have a weapon like Gronkowski. Garoppolo can just throw it anywhere near him, and he's going to make the catch. Belichick, they're smart enough to figure things out, and if they go 2-2 for that first month of the season, I think they can recover to win that division. Second place, I think it's going to be tight between Buffalo and New York. I know Ryan's not the most likable fellow, but I think that they're rallying around him up there a little bit. I really like Shady McCoy. I'd like to see what happens to him if he gets another year, a healthy year, if he stays out of nightclubs in Harrisburg. I think that their defense...
There's always a nightclub factor,
their defense will come along, but so I think it's going to be tight between second and third with the Jets and the Bills. I'd like to see what Forte's going to do. He's another one of my favorite players ever since he's with the Bears. See what he does with the Jets. You know, those three, Marshall, Fitzpatrick, and Forte. That's a pretty good top three weapons on your offense. Revis on defense as always. And yeah, the Jets or the Dolphins. I agree. You know, how many more chances are they going to get? Tannehill, he'll put up fantasy numbers, but he's not going to win a lot of games. So, yeah, first place I have the Patriots. Second place the Jets, or excuse me, not the Jets, the Bills.
You know, Mike, not to bring back painful memories, but the Jets won 6 games more from 14 to 15. They're 10-6 and did not make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Right.
Not often a 10-6 team's not making the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think the big move the Jets made was last year. I was really happy when they hired him. I think Todd Bowles is a class act. What I like about Todd Bowles, he doesn't say much to the public, but his team knows who's running the show. He doesn't put up with no discipline. The players are accountable. I think Rex Ryan's last couple of years, nobody was accountable.
It was, yeah.
So I
crazy.
think Todd Bowles makes them accountable. I think the Jets have a great chance to win that division this year, but I also think they got to start off 3-1. They have to have a great start to win that division this year and stay injury-free. You know, you talk about Brandon Marshall, but Eric Decker has become a big force for the Jets.
That
also.
paid dividends
Especially
big
this season.
last year, finally.
It did. Fitzpatrick, he's got a 1-year contract. I think he wants to do really well this year. And I think looking down the road, listening to Chan Gailey, I think the kid from Penn State's going to be the Jet quarterback of the future. Chan Gailey's really high on young man from Penn State. Yep, that the Jets drafted in the 2nd round last year. And from what I hear from early pre-camps and so forth, he's been tremendous, and the Jets are just gleaming and smiling over the way he's performing in their mini camps and so forth. So I'm looking at the Jets. If they go 3-1, I think they'll win that division. If not, how can you bet against the best coach in the NFL? Barring none, he is the best coach in the NFL, first ballot Hall of Famer. What a job he's done in New England, because when he took over their program, they were nothing. And the best play that happened to him was when the Jets knocked out the quarterback who wouldn't have won a Super Bowl for them. Okay?
Bledsoe.
Yep, and then Brady takes over, and the rest is history, because Bill Belichick will tell you, when we drafted Tom Brady, we didn't think he was going to be great, but he is great. So that was a great play by the Jets there, knocking out a Bledsoe.
Too bad he wasn't good enough for the Browns, you know.
Wow.
Belichick.
Browns were moving. He was building a program there. Okay, let's go to AFC North.
Well, this is the one that we all love and hold dear to ourselves.
I don't hold on.
I think this is going to be a 2 playoff team.
Ooh.
You know, I see a possible Super Bowl contender coming out of the AFC North.
Ravens and Bengals.
I think the Bengals, the Bengals, you know what? They stay solid. They stay consistent. Baltimore, they have a chance to slowly improve. Cleveland.
Let me interject something though. Did you ever see a team blow a playoff game like the Bengals did against the Steelers last year? They gave that away.
I've seen teams do that several times.
And it's talk about an undisciplined team.
Andy Dalton, this may be his year that you know, Marvin Lewis. You know, how many years can they keep the guy around? But you know, they got the momentum. I think the owners know that it's Marvin Lewis not throwing the ball.
Right.
So, and you know, it's not Marvin Lewis drafting the players. So, they've got their manager out there, and I respect that. But right now, looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers, Swicky, their line's healthy. They got a good attitude right now. I mean, Le'Veon Bell, he's out 4 games. Give him some rest. Puff a little Chiva.
Their line's healthy. Haven't played a game yet. Their line's
he's
healthy.
going to be healthy when he comes back.
Yeah,
but the Steelers, you know, like I said, weeds really have been infringing upon their success. Or,
Yeah.
you know, but I like, you know, you got an upbeat, positive Ben Roethlisberger. And that's what really just, you know, when you got a healthy Ben, you got a solid front line, they can make up for a lot of woes in the defense, which I think the defense, they're going to turn a little bit more of the corner and play solid. You always got that Baltimore X factor, though. You never know what that team's going to do. But Cincinnati, I see Pitt 1, Cincinnati 2 coming out of that division.
John?
So 2 years ago, we had 3 teams come out of this division making the playoffs. Baltimore then fell off last year. We lost 5 more games. The Browns lost 4 more games. I think both of those teams are in decline. I see maybe the Browns holding serve, but I don't see Baltimore really making a resurgence, even if they are more healthy, and obviously injuries hurt them last year. I think Cincinnati takes a step back this year. I think that the undisciplined component, that's a huge reflection on the coaching staff, huge reflection on the culture and the philosophy of a team. When you see those events transpire like we saw in the playoffs last year, I think that's a window into maybe how that organization is run. It's not a pretty picture. I've never been sold on Andy Dalton. If you get pressure, he runs automatically to the right, cuts off half of his field, and he's not a quarterback that is good under pressure. He's not a quarterback that's able to find a second, third receiver. He's not good at extending the play, despite the fact he had a ton of weapons. Speaking of those weapons, he lost a lot of them. Yeah. Harrison's gone, Sanu's gone, as I mentioned earlier. He had 2 good running backs, still has those. The wide receiving core now is a little lighter. Burfict's going to be out a couple games now to start the year, and he's a great player when he's there, but can you have a guy that's such a loose cannon like he is?
He can't stop punching people, and that's a problem.
It is a problem. And if you're not able to channel that into an effective player, and they haven't been able to so far, I see them taking a step back. Now, I see Pittsburgh in a good spot right now, despite Bryant being out for the year and despite Bell being out for 4 games. They are healthy. I love both of their lines, as Lon mentioned. Their weapons are as good as anybody in the NFL, from receiver to running back, and they picked up Green from the tight end from San Diego. Defensive backfield is where the question is, and it has been. Their front 7 on defense is good, is competent. Their linebacking core is good. They need a little depth on a defensive line, but otherwise I think they're going to get some pressure on the quarterback. Can that young now defensive backfield stand up? They drafted heavily. They had Senquez Golston, who drafted second round last year, was out all last year, just had a foot injury. He's going to be out probably all this year. So already we're down one guy. They gave out the most passing yards in the NFL last year. Can they improve on that and be competent? If your defense is competent from the Pittsburgh Steelers perspective, then they're going to make a run. We're going to go from 3 teams 2 years ago to 2 teams last year. There's only 1 team from this division making the playoffs.
Oh, wow.
Jim? Bill? Well, I'll go to Bill first.
Yep.
Well, since I'm sure you got at least a couple dozen Browns fans in the audience, in your viewing audience, let me talk about the Browns, okay?
You're right ahead.
The Browns are in an unenviable position.
They have to play games.
When you're coming off a 3-13, and guess what? You're rebuilding. So that's not good.
I tell you one thing I think is good, though, seriously. For the first time, I think you have the right coach and the right GM, and give them time, they're going to be back.
I think RG3 was a great pickup.
He was named as the starter. As of the day that this is being filmed, he was named by Coach Hugh Jackson as the starting quarterback, which doesn't surprise anyone.
Football man.
They also have this, I guess it's been dubbed the Moneyball front office there with Sashi Brown from Harvard and Paul DiPodesto from the Jonah Hill character.
Played by Jonah Hill, yes.
Yeah. And they parlayed their number 2 draft pick into 5 extra picks. They've got 14 draft picks this year, 4 of which they drafted were wide receivers. They've got 12 next year, and they're just loaded up. And they're hopefully, and you said this before the show started, if Jimmy Haslam
leave him alone,
can give the front office and this coaching staff a chance, then they may finally be on the right track. Jimmy Haslam is a very philanthropic guy, charitable guy. He acquired the team in 2012, and he's on his 4th head coach.
Yeah.
That's not a recipe for success.
The rest of the league really likes him, especially in their conference.
Yeah. I was laughing about strength of schedule that you guys have been talking so much about. I wonder why it is that the Bengals and the Steelers always end up having the easiest strength of schedule every year. That's because the Browns.
Okay, yeah.
Well, yeah,
Who are you picking?
Well, I'm picking the Bengals to really follow through, not only through the regular season, but the playoffs.
Wow.
And with their tandem of running backs, with a very solid quarterback, I'm hoping Tyler Eifert gets his health back because he's a real weapon. I'm interested to see Tyler Boyd, to see the kid out of Pitt, if he can step right in and get some playing time, because they did lose a couple of receivers. But their defensive line is still extremely tough. I actually see Cincinnati playing for the AFC Championship.
There you go.
Steelers?
I see the Steelers being edged out in a tiebreaker to Oakland and not making the playoffs.
Wow, to Oakland.
I got to ask Mr. Swick, just to make sure I'm clear on the Steelers. Is William Gay, Will Allen, Mike Mitchell, and Jarvis Jones still starters on the defense?
I think as of now they are, yeah.
Case closed. They were torched mercilessly last year. Ben Roethlisberger can outscore a number of teams, but that defense just isn't of playoff caliber.
Well, a
Secondaries
little bit
is
more
set.
pressure up front will help that secondary
Jim?
out. So
And Golson, I think they were really counting on. I hear he's out
He's out for the year.
out for the year. So
Jim?
I'd like the Steelers, even with Bell out. You know, D'Angelo Williams, he might be 33, but I think he proved that he can still carry some load. And, you know, Bell will come back in week 5 healthy, hopefully. Losing Martavis Bryant, same thing, next man up. Roethlisberger's always good hitting his weapons. I don't like Heath Miller going. I think he was a very underrated player for his entire career. Ben's safety net, so it'll be interesting to see. I don't know if Jesse James is going to be the starter. Talked about the guy they got from San Diego. But defensively, I know
Green from San Diego is phenomenal.
Yeah.
he's hurt.
Yeah, but he's hurt, and you know, but still, I mean, that was a great pickup. But Jesse James, you know,
he's big, 6'7",
They get wired
270.
up, too.
You know, we'll see.
he's capable. Yeah.
But went to high school 3 miles from where I grew up. But anyhow, I digress. But I
Is
think
his real name Jesse James?
I think it is.
so weird.
Defensively, I know we talk about the backfield, but look at the guys up front. I think Ryan Shazier is going to be the guy that steps up this year and has a monster year. That's going to help put pressure on the quarterback. That's going to take a lot of pressure off the defensive backs. Cam Hayward had an incredible year last year. I think he's going to step right up. He stepped in nicely on the defensive line, replacing Key, so I think he's going to take another step forward. James Harrison, the ageless wonder, even though he might be putting about $40,000 a month into his body, but he's still a heck of a player. I think he still puts fear in the hearts of a lot of teams. He might not be out there, 30 snaps a game, but he still has his presence on the defense. I think Roethlisberger might be the most valuable player in the NFL to his team. Without him, they don't go. So if he stays healthy, they get Bell back. I think the Steelers could win 13 games. I do have the Bengals kind of like I think they're still going to be there as well. You can't trust. How many years now has Dalton been in the league without winning a playoff game? You wonder if that's a fluke or if he's due to bust through. He might be, but losing the weapons they did on offense, I would like to see Tyler Boyd, see how good he does for them. But I have the Bengals at 2, Ravens at 3, and the Browns at 4. Interesting to see what RG3 does in that division. As a Steeler fan, I'd like to see how he stacks up against that Steelers defense, because he has the arm and he has the feet. But no, I think the Steelers are the class of the division right now, and I think they've got to be the favorites.
Okay, AFC North for me, I think it's between the Steelers and Bengals. 2 reasons why I'm picking the Steelers. Roethlisberger's better quarterback than Dalton, and I really feel Mike Tomlin's a much better head coach than the young man in Cincinnati who's been there forever. But I like Tomlin. And real quick, one of the Jet players who played for the Steelers said to Todd Bowles, he thinks there's a lot of Mike Tomlin in him, and he really likes Todd Bowles, and that's enough for me to like Todd Bowles. Okay, AFC South, real quick, Lon.
Yeah, AFC South, you got a lot of money in Indiana now. Luck is expected to finally get them over the edge. I don't think it's going to happen. Jacksonville's an interesting team. And how they've built, and the ownership said, let's go out, spend. Hey, we don't want to be the laughing stock of the NFL. They're going to do a little bit better, and I think Houston, how much they pay that tall kid, the 6'7"?
Osweiler.
Yeah, Brock Osweiler, $750 gajillion or something like that. It's crazy. Houston is on the downside. Titans, I think, still better than average. I think Jacksonville is going to be a surprise jump up and take that division this year.
Picking Jacksonville, they're going to get people in the stands then. Okay,
Yeah,
I agree with you. Jacksonville's going to be better. However, Houston's won 9 games 2 years in a row with who at quarterback. There's been a long laundry list. Is Brock Osweiler the answer? He's better than what they had, and I think they're going to be better as a result. I see them winning 10 games, making the playoffs. Indy and Jacksonville vying for that second wild card and a second team out of there. I'm not sure either one's ready to make that jump, but I like that Jacksonville team. They got weapons and they got a good defense. I like what I'm seeing there. I see them making one of the bigger jumps in the AFC. I don't think Tennessee's. They're at least a year or 2 away.
Jacksonville actually might have a home game that's televised in Jacksonville.
Oh, yeah.
This year. Yeah.
Blackout.
I kind of dubbed the AFC South as the top power conference in the NFL, which is unusual considering we've always considered them to be the weakest over the past several years. But I'm looking at a team coming out of this division actually going to the Super Bowl, and that's the Houston Texans. I think they've got all the pieces.
They're going to the Super Bowl.
I'm not basing it so much on Brock Osweiler, although I wouldn't be surprised at all if he performs very competently. But I think they've got all the other pieces in place. They added Lamar Miller. They've got DeAndre Hopkins, who is a huge weapon. And you guys may laugh when I say this, but I think the guy that's really going to step up this year to supplement J.J. Watt is Jadeveon Clowney. I think he's going to make a major impact. I also think Indianapolis is a playoff team.
He's going to stop being a clown.
He may be, yeah. I really look to see that. But I think Indianapolis is going to bounce back. I think they're going to win 10 games. I think T.Y. Hilton's going to have a career year. Frank Gore, I'm a little iffy on him at age 33, but I think he's probably good enough. I think this is a division, come the end of the year, nobody in the NFL is going to want to play any one of these 4 teams, because I think Jacksonville, with what they've got Chris Ivory coming in, I think they made probably one of the best draft picks from picking up Jalen Ramsey.
I think the AFC South within a year or two is going to be like the AFC North used to be.
And Tennessee's still got some missing pieces, but they are really building. So I see 2 playoff teams.
Jim?
Indy 1, Houston 2, Jacksonville 3, and the Titans 4.
Okay, and I'm going to go with the Colts winning the division and Texans making a wild card. AFC West, Lon.
Yeah, AFC West, everybody's on the Oakland Raiders bandwagon now. They're the chic pick like Buffalo was like 4 or 5 years ago. Everybody's rubbing the magic ball, saying this and that. Listen, I've been talking about Oakland Raiders for the last couple of years with Carr coming in at quarterback. They are a better team. They have a chance of jumping up and stealing a few games. Here's the deal. Nothing's going to get past Denver's defense. Denver scores 15 to 16 points a game, John Swick. It's over. That defense is back together again. They're going to be just as brutal.
Who's their quarterback?
That's the
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. They hold.
Sanchez?
They can hold. They can hold the opposition. They're going to win. And I'm taking Denver, and that's the only team coming out. KC is KC. San Diego is San Diego. I mean, what can you say?
John?
San Diego can't sign their first-round draft choice. It was amazing in this day and age. Oakland Raiders are going to be better. Denver, the question is the quarterback. Mark Sanchez or Semien, I think. I can't remember who the other 2 guys are. They're vying for the quarterback spot. So can they score the 15 or 16 or 17 points a game? That's a question. I actually like Kansas City. I think there's some consistency there. Andy Reid has proven to be a quality head coach. I see Oakland maybe taking a step up, and Oakland and Denver, but I think this may be only a 1-team division right now. But it's really it's tough to handicap right now. But I think I'm gonna go maybe with KC.
Bill, you like the Raiders?
I actually am picking 2. This is the first outrageous comment of the day, on my part at least. I see 2 playoff teams out of the division, neither of whom is going to be the Denver Broncos. I'm picking them to go 7-9 and miss the playoffs. The Mark Sanchez or some fella from Northwestern, or maybe even Paxton Lynch, who's not anywhere near ready. Everybody talks about the fellas they lost on defense, which they did, Malik Jackson and Danny Trevathan. It's been seldom stated that they lost 3 offensive line starters as well. I just think they've got too many holes that the defense is just not going to be good enough to win these games with all the other problems they have. I'm going to pick Kansas City to win kind of by default. They just seem solid in all respects. I'm a little higher on Alex Smith than some people are. He's a game manager, but he wins a lot of games.
He's a piece of toast. That's your excitement with Alex Smith. That's it.
I like Oakland Raiders. I think they are on the upswing. Between Derek Carr and Amari Cooper, they've got the best combo for years to come.
Best young quarterback in football right
So they're going to go 9-7 and win a tiebreaker against the Steelers.
Big fan of Carr.
I have Denver number 1, like Lon said. What are you going to get past their defense? If Cam Newton couldn't do it, who's going to do it in that division? You talk about how they don't have a quarterback. Did they have one last year?
They had 2 last
year.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
They had 2 last year.
Right.
So, yeah, Denver 1. I do like Kansas City's number 2. I like Andy Reid. Because I lived in Philadelphia while he was down there and they hated him, so I really like him. Number 3, Raiders. I think, again, they're going to be on the upswing. I like Carr. He definitely puts up stats, and he seemed to always toast the Steelers every year they play him. And the Chargers, number 4, Phillip Rivers. Again, he's good, but who's you have around him? He's getting a little older. So, yeah, Denver's my pick.
AFC West, I want to pick the Chiefs. Okay, let's go to the Super Bowl, guys. Who are you picking for the Super Bowl? Lon, who do you got in the Super Bowl?
Right off the gate. I'm going to go Pittsburgh and Arizona for a rematch.
Pittsburgh and Arizona.
Yeah, that's my 2 teams.
John?
I'm gonna second that, believe it or not. I said Pittsburgh and Arizona in the Super Bowl.
Okay. Bill?
I'll pick Arizona and the Houston Texans.
Wow. Jim?
Pittsburgh over Arizona.
Oh, brother.
Wow. Last year I picked the Steelers and they almost got there, but this year
Jets.
No, I'm not going to pick the Jets.
Come
I'm going to pick the Patriots going to Super Bowl again. I just think until somebody can knock off the Patriots in the AFC.
I'm not going to doubt you on that one.
I'm going to pick the Patriots in the NFC, though. I'm going to go with the other New York team. I think the Giants could have an outstanding season. Their defense is a lot better. A couple of their pickups, and I look for the young man JP with the fireworks. He's going to be able to play a little better with that one missing finger this year. So I think he'll be
Pierre-Paul.
Pierre-Paul, right, JP Pierre-Paul. Okay, real quickly, let's go to major college. The Final Four major college. Lon or John, jump in here if you thought about it at all.
Yeah, I've actually given it some thought, and I've seen that you look at the top 25 going into this, a lot of parity there. You've got, fewer SEC teams in the top 10, more Big Ten, but it gets flaky in the first couple, and everybody finds their way, but look, you got teams like Houston who are going to throw in a mix. Baylor, I thought, was a little bit generous being that high, but you got LSU now with a better team coming in. So I think it's going to be, I think you're going to see the ACC actually come out this year. Clemson, you got North Carolina, Florida State. Yep. You're going to see the ACC in the next 2 years starting to be the dominant team. In 5 years, the ACC will be the SEC.
No.
Book it, baby.
Actually,
that ain't gonna happen.
I like a lot of those comments because I think the SEC's domination is going to be watered down and diluted. We have big 5 power conferences now. Those guys are separating themselves from the NCAA, and you're going to see them elevate and kind of it'll be more modulation between the 5 of them. You'll see more parity between the 5 of them. So I think you're going to see more teams than just 2 SEC teams in that Final Four, which I think is going to be good for college football.
Don't you think?
Guys, give me some teams you think might make the Final Four at the top of your head.
I think Clemson's going to be right back in the hunt again.
I'll pick Ohio State week 2 to go to Oklahoma and beat the Sooners. And that is going to vault them into the top 4.
Big 12
One of the reasons why you're seeing the SEC maybe talent a little bit is because Urban Myers, being an SEC person, knows how to recruit the SEC, and he's done a great job. Then you got Harbaugh now at Michigan is revamped. I think the Big Ten is going to be the conference really on the upswing down the road. You have 2 outstanding coaches there in the Big Ten now. ACC, a couple teams maybe, but you got some soft teams in the ACC still. SEC to me is still the best conference. I look for Alabama to win the whole thing again. Jim?
Clemson. I have Clemson. I do like the ACC, maybe because I'm a Pitt fan.
That's why.
Don't sleep on Pitt this year, by the way. I think they can be pretty good.
Yeah, but they'll lose to Ball State in week 4.
And they'll beat Florida State,
exactly.
Yeah, but no, I like Clemson this year.
Well, one thing good about Pitt is they have the same coach again.
They do?
Yeah.
That's been a little bit about that. All right, so again, Lon, John, Bill, thanks for coming on. You guys always, your insight is great. And
appreciate
John,
the opportunity.
Yeah, keep it with tradition. One of us got lost on the way here.
Okay.
So it was John this time.
Can I remember that term?
For Jim Berger, I'm Mike Furrell. Thanks for watching the NFL Major College Preview on Sports Close-Up.